Hello, Friday. Hello, Friday. It's the second Friday of March. Tomorrow we change the clocks ahead, and next week is the actual first day of spring. Pretty exciting stuff. Anyway, there's lots of optimism about COVID ending and vaccines starting and getting back to quote unquote normal, which is terrific. So, hope all of you are feeling the positivity of springtime and letting the past of the behind us. Okay. What we're going to talk about today is a topic that was suggested by someone in the community, topic called resiliency. Topic called resiliency. Now, a lot of people think resiliency. If you said to people, it's like, what does resiliency mean to you? A lot of people would say, oh, it's just the ability to bounce back. And I say, I don't just want to bounce back because that will put me in the exact same place I was before. And I'm not sure I like that place, right? So, how do we think about resiliency? Let me share my screen and give you my definition of resiliency. My definition of resiliency is the skill, and resiliency is a skill, and we're going to talk about that. It's the skill to learn and then adjust and then leap forward, get to a better place, leap forward and get to a better place. They look at emotional intelligence and they found that resiliency is actually one of the top skills of emotional intelligence. And resiliency is one of the top skills of top executives and CEOs. They have resiliency. They can take the adversity that comes in business life, and they can take that adversity, learn from it, and grow from it, and make their companies stronger because of it. Resiliency is a skill that allows us to improve our thinking. It allows us to improve our happiness. And yet, resiliency can be transform our lives and be a transformative skill in a very powerful, positive way. Now, we aren't born with resiliency. It's a skill we have to learn, just like riding a bike. We remember that the default mechanisms for our brain are bad or strong is stronger than good. So what we have to do is we need to keep leaning into the potential for good. We have to keep leaning into the possibility for good until it becomes easier to access that new map that we're trying to develop, that new brain map. Yeah, resiliency is about developing new, more positive, forward-looking brain maps. New maps that say, I can do this. I am good enough. And put you in what neuroscientists call a toward state and not an away or withdrawal state. Now, for many, this could be super hard. It could take a lot of time, and it's going to take a lot of effort, but it's worth it. Now, if you want a little laugh, I ask you, and I mentioned that resiliency is a skill like learning a bike. And I ask you to, if you haven't seen this video, Google this video. Gentleman's name is Destin Sandlin. And just Google Destin Sandlin riding a backwards bike. Now, what Destin did is he basically had some engineers redo the gears on his bike, that if you had to steer one way, when you steer a bike one way, it goes one way, and you steer it the other way, it goes the other way. But he had the engineers engineer his bike that it went the opposite way with very humorous results. It was impossible to ride a backwards bike. It took him a lot of effort and a lot of work to learn how to ride a backwards bike because we learned how to ride a bike in the first place. We learned how to be not resilient in the first place. So now we have to relearn new maps on how to be resilient. Now, here's the thing. With 1 year of COVID, the 1 year anniversary of COVID, it has given us the opportunity to develop your resiliency skills. You have been working on your resiliency, whether you know it or not. It may have been subconscious, but you've been working on your resiliency. You have become more resilient in many ways. Now, I'd like to take a moment, pause, and let's reflect. And I'd like you to share in the chat box. What have you learned this past year? Something you learned, it made you more resilient. Some skill you got better at, it made you more resilient. All right. Let's talk about what we've learned and or maybe what we've gotten better at. For me, my examples, I've gotten way better at virtual meetings and technology. I think a year ago, I wasn't even sure what Zoom was. I've gotten much better at technology and virtual meetings and things like that. I've also discovered Costco. So I never really had been to a Costco before, but now I really love all my Costco shopping adventures. So put in the chat box, what have you learned and what have you maybe gotten better at? I've learned to slow down on purpose. Excellent, excellent. Personal forgiveness. Learned on the importance of self-care. Excellent things, excellent things. What else? What else have you learned? All of these things are powerful things. Now, if we can look at the past year of COVID and focus on the away things like what we had to give up, or we can look on the resilient, more powerful, positive things, what we learned, what we gained, and let's focus on those for a minute. Learn to become more empathetic with others. I don't know. Very great. Empathy is a tremendously important skill. I've learned how much more little things matter. Another excellent one. Excellent. Keep putting them in the chat box. We will continue to get to them and share them out. Anyway, give you a framework for building a new resiliency skill. I call it the getting in strategies. First thing you need to do at the base level, you need to get in control. You need to not lash out. You need to control your ability to think. You need to raise your self-awareness. You need to be in control of the situation, not feeling like a victim, not being overwhelmed by either stinking thinking or the drama monster. You know, stinking thinking and the drama monster are enemies of resiliency. You need to get in control. The second thing you need to do is you need to put yourself, once you're in control, you need to put yourself in a good place. Put yourself in a really positive towards state. And a lot of things you shared in the chat box are ways to do that and to think about that. And the third piece of the puzzle is that you need to learn how to get inspired, to inspire yourself. Those three steps, getting in control, getting in a good place, and getting inspired will help you build those new resiliency maps. Now, not only have you benefited, your resiliency has benefited from a year of COVID, but for those who've been on this Neuro-Fitness Friday journey, you've also been developing some powerful basic resiliency tools on these Neuro-Fitness Friday sessions. You learned that stinking thinking and drama monster were enemies of resiliency. You learned about the power of just stopping and feeling our feelings. You learned about the power of gratitude, writing down a piece of gratitude journaling, being thankful for what you have. You learned about rebooting, unplugging, reframing, how to reframe a situation and think about it more positively. You learned about accessing your personal skill base when things get really tough and really focus on what you're good at. You learned about a greater sense of purpose and the examples we talked about whether it was Desert Storm or Bob the Shoe Shiner or things like that. They have a greater sense of purpose. And you learned about when things get really tough, just really relying on your North Star and your personal definition of what happiness means to you. So if within the framework of getting in and control, getting in a good place, and getting inspired, I also like to let's pause, and I'd like you to put in the chat box, what are the 2 or 3 things that come to mind, or maybe what's the one thing that comes to mind that's helped you over these last few weeks, that's resonated with you to help you either get yourself in control, get yourself in a good place, or get yourself inspired. Prayer and going to church, excellent. Those are excellent ways to just say, I'm going to get myself in a good place, put myself in a good place. Those are really things. Spirituality is a really powerful way to put yourself in a good place. Neuro-Fitness Fridays, thank you. I appreciate that Neuro-Fitness Fridays can put you in a good place and hopefully maybe even get you inspired. That's great. Turned everything off and sat in a quiet room. That's great. Another way to just kind of like tap into your mindfulness, tap into your breathing, tap into just what you're feeling in the moment and eliminating distractions. Meditating, looking at myself in the mirror and saying, I got you and I love you. That's fantastic. Don't forget, you have to practice self-love. And just, we talked about the corniness of just giving yourself a hug. Your brain will thank you for it. Your brain will release dopamine. Smile, look in the mirror and smile at yourself. Enjoy what you see in the mirror. That will be another positive hit of dopamine for your brain. Visits, even socially distant with family or friends, so good for the soul. Another exciting example, being able to connect with others. Very, very good. Now, as we move on, many of us have a belief system that's often stuck in self-doubt. Maybe even self-pity. We compare ourselves to others and we say, oh, we're not as good as they are, or I wish I had what they have. We don't have what they have, or, they comparing ourselves to the neighbors, right? And then the feeling of jealousy kicks in. The feeling of jealousy kicks in, which is just another version of more stinking thinking. But as we move to create a more positive, more resilient, more winning belief system, a belief system that thrives on resiliency, here's one thing to remember. The only person you should compare yourself to is the person of your past self that you're trying to improve, that you're trying to change. So the only person you should compare yourself to is your past self. I'll share with you a little saying. I think it's very motivating, resonated with me, and maybe it will resonate with you. It's a saying that goes, I'm not the person I want to be, and I'm not the person I can be, but thankfully, I'm not the person I used to be. So there you have it, a growth affirmation that says, I'm not like I used to be. I'm better than I used to be, but I still can improve. What a powerful affirmation that is. I am not the person I want to be, and I'm not the person I can be, but thankfully, I'm not the person I used to be. So, turning the page, we shared a lot of things about what you've learned through COVID and what you learned through resilience, Neuro-Fitness Fridays on building your resiliency skills. And I'm going to share with you 3 more tools to help you build resiliency. The first tool is based on the premise. First tool is based on the premise that new brain maps actually are talking about having healthier brains. And healthier brains, if you want to develop new brain maps, you have to have the right soil conditions, if you will, to develop new brain maps. You wouldn't plant vegetables or plant plants in bad soil. Okay, you would dig it up, you would mix it, you would turn it, you would fertilize it a little bit. So when you want to create new brain maps, make sure you're giving your brain the healthiest chance you can. And what I've shared with you on this screen are the 6 actions that you need to make sure you're taking care of for a healthier brain. We've discussed many of these through our sessions, but I'm just going to go through them very quickly. First action is movement. Our brains developed while moving, searching for food, hunting for shelter. Our brains developed by moving. They weren't made for sitting behind a desk or being sedentary or stationary. Get up and move as much as you can. You'll clear out the cobwebs and be able to think more clearly. Number 2, second key step is about nourishment. Nourishment is more than just eating right. Nourishment is about breathing. Remember, we need oxygen. It's about hydration. We need to be hydrated. Our brains need water. And it's also about eating right. Lots of studies going on about, is there the right brain diet? I'll share with you right now. The only thing they found that actually helps regenerate brain cells is coffee. So if you like coffee, good for you. That's a good thing. Caffeinated coffee. Just make sure you're not damaging something else like your heart rate or your blood pressure with the caffeine. But if you can tolerate it, coffee is good for your brain cells. But what they have shown is that a negative or bad diet full of junk food is actually inflames the hippocampus, makes your memory reduced, impairs your ability to think clearly. And so think about eating a healthy diet. The third thing is about connections. We talked about social connections, visits with people. You know, our brains are very social brains. Sleep. Now, this weekend, we're going to quote unquote lose an hour of sleep. Like, think about it as gaining an hour of daylight, but make sure you get enough sleep and rest. Sleep is the ultimate fertilizer for the brain. There's releases a powerful chemical called brain-derived neurotropic factor, or BDNF for short. Brain-derived neurotropic factor it regenerates in your brain at night. We talked about the ability to steady and calm yourself. You shared many of the things you do, whether it's spiritual things or putting yourself in a meditative state or just even breathing, getting yourself steadied. And lastly, don't forget to play. Don't forget to laugh. Don't forget to have fun. Our brains enjoy laughter as much as our bodies do. The second thing you can do is think about a growth mindset. Think about a growth mindset. Carol Dweck was Dr. Carol Dweck wrote the book on growth mindset and talked about a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And there's been a lot of work and development by psychologists and neuroscientists on that ever since she wrote that book. The essence of the book says a fixed mindset says my skill set is fixed and I live life on a pass fail. I don't even want to try to do something that I don't think I can do. A growth mindset leans into the possibility of learning, the possibility of rewards, the possibility of learning new skills, developing our skills, becoming better. If you want to practice and develop a growth mindset, here's 2 powerful questions. Now, typical brains Typical brains, when they're faced with unsuccessful or bad experiences, generally default to the question, what went wrong? And that puts us in the negative and focusing on the negative and the bad. But a growth mindset, positive, forward looking, let's learn and let's adjust and let's leap forward mindset says, first thing is, what went well? What went well? Let's document what went well, because you probably did some things well. Secondly, rather than asking the question, what went wrong, and pulling everybody back down, ask yourself or ask others, what would I do differently? It gets you to the same place, but in a more powerful, positive state, without being defensive, without being victimized, without being feeling like you need to coil back and retreat. What went well, and what would I do differently? And here's the third thing. Celebrate small wins and reward yourself regularly. New brain maps need positive reinforcement for development. They need positive hits of dopamine and serotonin in order to make those wired connections really stick. Okay. They need the positive reinforcement. So celebrate a small win. Find a way to pat yourself on the back. Find a way to reward yourself. Maybe it's a big thing. Maybe it's just you get to reward yourself in a way. You type up a little certificate of achievement and print it out and hang it on your wall, or you give yourself a big Yahoo, or you bake yourself some cookies. I don't care what it is. It's important what it is to you. So reward yourself, celebrate even small wins. You have become resilient. You have achieved more resiliency. And when you can put yourself in that growth mindset or achieve some positive in control or in a good place or inspired thinking, then reward yourself. Say, I feel good about that. And what are you going to do to feel good about that? And how are you going to recognize that event? So now I'd like you to take a moment. You shared with us what are the things you learned during COVID, and what are the things you learned during Neuro-Fitness Fridays to become more resilient. Now I want you to share, how are you going to reward yourself? What are you going to do for the people that shared what they learned and how they're more resilient? I want you to reflect and just say, how are you going to reward yourself? Put it in the chat box so we all can appreciate your celebration. Taking off early today and riding a bike in wine country. For those of us that are near wine country, that's an outstanding idea. Bike riding is exercise, and I'm sure it's very beautiful and the weather is great. Well done. Getting a pedicure. Awesome. Riding a bike through wine country, and maybe then getting a pedicure. But if getting a pedicure is a terrific thing, that's a way to, and just do it not just because you need a pedicure, but think about it as a celebration, celebrating those small wins. Went on a solo camping trip to hike new trails, great celebration. Treating yourself to an event and daily dog walks in the park. Thinking about walking your dog is just a way to say, I'm just rewarding myself and taking Sparky to the dog park. And it's not just a part of your duty, but it's a part of your reward, right? Thinking about it as a reward. I shout in victory as the train's going by. It masks my shouting, but it feels great. Awesome way to just say, celebrate the moment. Just like I said, give yourself a Yahoo, an attaboy, a good thing. Family Zoom call to celebrate a March birthday. Another terrific thing on a family Zoom call. And when you're on that family Zoom call, why don't you ask other people to say, what have they learned or grown with during COVID, and how have they improved and gotten better, and ask them to share. Maybe that you get some exciting things and ask them to celebrate that piece of personal growth. Way to build on that Zoom call. Puppy learning, potty training. Awesome way up. If that works for you, that's great. And I would just take that and um, having the benefit of potty training a puppy is an excellent way. And once they're potty trained, it isn't it. Make sure once you achieve that potty training, you can celebrate that event as well. All right, we're almost to the top of the hour. So we'll wrap this up. We're going to wrap this up. Do you have any more? Have a few bourbons with you. Okay, there you go. Bourbon is good. That's another way to celebrate, as long as it doesn't create a hangover in the morning. A nice way to just reflect and celebrate and pause and appreciate life, appreciate what you've done. That is another good idea. So we're going to wrap this up. Remember, resiliency. Resiliency is a powerful skill, but it is a skill. You need to work at it. You need to keep developing it. You need to keep working at it. You've got some tools in your tool belt to really work at it. Just keep using those tools and becoming better. Your brain will thank you for it. So with that, I'll say hello, Friday. Hello, learning. Hello, adjusting. Hello, leaping forward to new growth and new opportunities and more resiliency. I am ready for what's next. You all have an awesome weekend. Take care, everybody.